If you're looking for a high-end American light that won't break the bank, then you need to check out the FreLux Synergy 2 LT. Welcome back to Shul Lights. I'm super excited today to be talking about the Synergy 2 LT by FreLux. FreLux is an amazing American company made completely in the USA, but with a really respectable price point and amazing features. So let's dive into it. Oh, but before I do, I should tell you that I've been purchasing from this company for years. This is the first review I've done for the company, and I own 8 of their lights, and I own Synergy 1s, Synergy 2s in various versions, like a Synergy 2 Plain, a Synergy 2 BFG. Now we're going to be talking about the Synergy 2 LT, Synergy 3s, etc. Okay, super psyched. So let's talk about why I love it so much. Well, first off, let's take a look at the fact that it is a side-by-side flashlight. This is a class of flashlight that has 2 batteries in parallel inside it. So it basically comes off like a flat flashlight because it has extra runtime because there's 2 of them, but instead of having a big fat cylindrical, battery that would push it wider, it kind of squishes out. Very akin to the Cool Fall Spy. If you've seen my video on the Cool Fall Spy, you'll know that this is an extremely expensive light, but see, the Synergy 2 has a lot of the same form factor features, but at a rock bottom sub $300 price. In fact, the Synergy 2 LT, if you act, quickly after my video here, it's on pre-order and it's only $250 right now. Well, we're gonna get to that, but let's talk more about the size and form factor of this and what makes it so great. So let's take a look at the fact that, let's talk about a little history actually, a little history for a second. So first there was the Synergy 1, okay? The Synergy 1 is the smallest of the lights and it's about that big. Then the Synergy 2 came out, that's Synergy 2. Then came out the Synergy 3. And the Synergy 3 is actually smaller. So it's a little bit confusing. You can't just go by the size. Now, what makes Synergy 1 so small is the fact that it runs on AAA batteries, AAA alkalines only. And it's a clicky switch. It's the least capable and the least output of all of them. And it was the first one that was ever made. It's pretty simple. Just kind of click it on and then half presses to go between the 3 modes and you click it off. Now, the Synergy 2 stepped up its game, and it was a huge improvement because it takes now 14500 sized batteries, or also it takes alkalines. So remember that this guy over here only took AAAs, then AA's, and 2 of them, or alkalines, so it's dual voltage, dual chemistry. And then later, the Synergy 3 came out. And the reason why it had the name Synergy 3 is because it was the 3rd one. But also, this one kind of melded the features of these 2 into one light. Because this one uses 10-440 lithium ion batteries or alkalines. So it's dual chemistry, but on the smaller battery size. Now, this one also has some pretty cool features like the fact that the top flips open, it's got hinges, but output is less than Synergy 2, runtime's less than Synergy 2, and it's floodier, so there's less candela. So when we talk about capability, the Synergy 2 here is still the top of the heap. So honestly, the Synergy 2 is my favorite of the 3. The only reason why I kept kind of jumping back and forth between the 2 and the 3 was because the 3 was slightly smaller. Now, as you can see on the overhead here, it's not dramatically smaller, but it's slightly smaller. It's a little bigger than the 1 over here, slightly smaller than the 2, but just that little bit of, smaller light really made it kind of feel better in my hand and in my pocket. But I was always wanting the features of the 2, which is the increased runtime, the bigger reflector, which meant more candela, and also it runs brighter. So for all those reasons, I kept jumping back and forth between the 2 and the 3 over and over and over. But now, with the Synergy 2 LT, I really think we have the best of both worlds. Let me show you why. So here is the Synergy 2LT. Let me move these over. And it is in the Style 1 because Ben is actually outdoing himself and he has 2 styles on sale right now, okay? I'll show you Style 2 in a second right here, but let's talk about how this is the best of both worlds. As you can see, it's ever so slightly smaller, especially in width, than the Synergy 2 over here. It's, bigger because it uses the 14500s and uses 2 of them just like this guy does. However, these cuts on the side here, let's get a good shot of this. They really make a huge difference. Even though maybe if you took calipers and you measured here and over here, it's arguably identically the same size, he's done a good job updating the look, kind of giving it a much more modern look than the Synergy 2 over here, which is just kind of plain straight sides. So he really, put some nice cuts in here. Also, it's got some grip points for your finger right there, but it's flat where it needs to be. And it just feels great in my hand. And this one felt really good in my hand, really small. But where the cuts are on the 2LT, it just, I guess what I'm trying to say, it's hard to explain until you hold it, but it's bigger where it needs to be in the reflector, but it's thinner where I grip it. So it's kind of, like a physical illusion, it's a great light. So let's take a look now at the Synergy 2LT, the Style 1, which is what you're looking at here. And next to it here, I've got a case. This is what it comes in. And it zippers open, and inside you see the layout here. And this is the Style 2. So the difference on these is literally just whether the back cap here matches the top or whether it's black. So there's going to be no functional difference at all between the two. It's just style. Now, I know that if you just kind of casually look at them, I know that I personally thought this was the more attractive of the two at first. But if you look carefully, let me just get a really good shot of this here. You can see that this line right here is actually diagonal. And for that reason, I don't know why, but now I kind of think that the look of the Style 1 that I'm tapping over here is a little nicer than Style 2. But I mean, that's in the eye of the beholder. So you be the judge on that. One of the things that I really like about these lights is it has a captive clip system in here that has tension adjust on the fly. This is an amazing feature that I've not seen on any other flashlight on the market. So what that is this clip right here that says FreLux. And I love his new lasering that it's not just, milled out, it's actually dark and a different color. Now, if you look here, the clip's got a bend to it and it's very springy. Okay, nice tension. And this little thing you see underneath the clip, that's just something I put there. I just want to point out that when he ships you the light, he ships a little circular plastic sticker that you're supposed to insert right under where the clip touches the body to prevent it from scratching the body. His new shape though, and you can see that there's a land right here, instead of a trough. This is meant to not only grip your pants better, but to prevent some of that scratching that used to happen on, for example, this one right here, where it's a trough inside. So that's a kind of a nicer design that he's got. So you can see this is, you can kind of see that little dot in there. It's transparent, hard to see. Now, I only had one of them, so I just put a little kind of glow tape under there. So ignore that, okay? But I want to point out that this clip here, which is quite springy, you can change the tension on it this easily. What you do is there's a dial back here and you loosen this dial just a little bit. And now you can push and slide the clip in. And how much you slide it in and then tighten this again so it won't slide back out. Now it's, that's very rigid now. I'm really putting a lot of force on it. And you can go even further. You can go like all the way down. If you do that, the clip is exceedingly tight. So again, just you get all this space for tension. And I'm telling you, that is one of the best features I've ever seen because I like a kind of a loose clip generally, but sometimes I'll be at like a amusement park and I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my light on a ride. So I'll tighten that thing up, stick it in my pocket, and it is secure as anything. Now let's take a look at operation on this light. So if you look on the top here, there's a button, and the button's got some thoughtful milling just for grip. Now the way this works is you just push it and the light comes on, and you push it and the light goes off. Simple, easy peasy. Now, if you push it on and then you press and hold, it's going to ramp up. And then if you push, lift up and push and hold, it ramps down. So this is a ramping OS. Now it's got a couple shortcuts that make it really awesome. So for example, let me go back to the light and turn it up. So we're going to turn it up. It's got mode memory. So if I turn it off, when I turn it back on, it'll be exactly where I left it. There you go. Let me go ahead and turn it off again and show you that it's got shortcuts to moonlight. So I press and hold. It comes off at the lowest every single time. It's got a double tap to turbo. So if I double tap, there's turbo. Double tap again, returns to the previous saved memory mode. So you see how it's high, it's not the lowest. And that's because the lowest I had gotten there by a shortcut. So this is a really intelligent like operating system. You can set your light somewhere on the ramp and it'll memorize it. And then when you turn it off and just hold, you can go to moonlight, double tap to turbo, double tap to get out of turbo, and it'll bounce back to the memorized mode. It's really intelligent. Now, new for this model is an added strobe. Now, I'm not a big fan of strobe. Some people love it. Some people ask for it. I don't like strobe, and I definitely don't like it when strobe accidentally activates. So sometimes strobe will be like 3 clicks or 4 clicks, and it's possible when you're ramping up and down and doing all this stuff to accidentally click enough times to enter strobe, and it bugs me every time. So what Ben did at FreLux is he put the strobe in a certain spot where you're just never going to activate it by accident. So the way it works is the light has to be off. Then you press and hold to go to moonlight and you keep holding. And then after 3 seconds, the strobe activates. So if the light is already on, all the pressing and holding in the world isn't going to do anything to it. The light has to be off. And then you got to press and hold for a long time for it to activate. It's a really thoughtful strobe feature that I like and I'm never going to accidentally activate. One more thoughtful feature is it has a lockout, and the lockout is a mechanical lockout. So let me show you how it works. It works by rotating the button, and the button physically cannot be depressed now. Now you can lock it out so it doesn't turn on, or you could turn on the light and lock it out so the light won't turn off now. So either way, it's your choice, but you just rotate the button about 45 degrees to lock it, and then counterclockwise about 45 degrees to unlock again. Let's finish up talking about the ergonomics of the light by mentioning that the clip can be on this side or this side. And in fact, often when the light ships to you, it's on the side that I consider the left-handed side, and I'm right-handed. Usually it ships on that side, I think, because it's got the cool name over here, and then the FreLux and the name Synergy 2LT is all on one side. So just all you do is you loosen this nut all the way like this, okay? And then see how the cap comes off? We're going to get to the batteries in a second here, but you can actually take this nut out by just pulling it. It's just got a little O-ring, so a little friction there. Now the clip is captive because it's slotted. See, it's not coming up because it's slotted into a channel here. So all you do is you take it out, reverse it to the other side, slot it back into the channel. Easy for me to do on camera, right? There we go. Insert this button back into the hole, thread it back on, and now you have it in the opposite side. While we've got it open, let's talk about the batteries and how that works. So you can see that I have two 14500 AA sized lithium ion batteries in the light right now. And I do prefer to run it that way for a myriad of reasons. One, they don't leak because you put alkalines in there. They're gonna possibly leak and destroy the electronics. Two, they just have more energy in them, meaning longer run time at higher outputs. Now, you can run nickel metal hydride rechargeables or alkalines in here. You can run anything you want, actually. Anything from 1 volts up to 4.2 volts. But the only caveat here is don't mix chemistries. Don't put an alkaline in along with a 14500 lithium ion, okay? That's going to be a bad thing. So always use two matched batteries. Now there's an advanced feature I'm going to talk about in a moment about kind of intentionally using unmatched batteries, but you got to be very careful with this, and I'm going to tell you that in a second, okay? But if you're looking for a light that can run on alkalines, can run on nickel metal hydride, on loops, and lithium ion, this light is a great light because of its multi-chemistry driver. Now, I also want to point out that it has low voltage protection. There's a kind of really advanced circuit in here that looks at the voltage of the battery that's in it. And if you're lithium ion, when it drops under, I think, 2.5 volts, it's going to cut off. Whereas if the voltage starts low, like around 1.2 or 1.4, then it recalibrates and knows you have that chemistry in. So it's really smart that way. I'll throw in right now that if you're using lithium ion and it drops, there's just a situation where if it drops really low to like 2.5 and it cuts off, and then you put alkalines in, sometimes it doesn't spot that it's changed chemistries and the light doesn't turn on. But all you got to do is leave batteries out of the light for, I believe, 30 seconds. And that's enough to reset the driver, and it'll look at the new batteries you put in and calibrate accordingly. Now, going over to here, I also want to point out that if you've got lithium ions in there, the lithium ions will be higher output. I'm measuring about 800 lumens on the emitter I have. But another great thing about, his light is the fact that he will build it with multiple emitters for you. So we're going to go to the website and take a look at that later. So stay tuned for that. Because the light has two batteries in it, it's not heavy, but it's on the medium heavy side. But one thing that's cool is they are in parallel. So that means you can actually run the light on a single battery and save some weight if you want to do so. So 1, 2, no problem. Just make sure that if you are using two, they're at the same voltage. That's just so that, one doesn't run down faster than the other and create problems. Now, as I said, you can run it on a single battery. So if you had, this is, AAA, so that's not going to work. But if you had a AA alkaline and you stuck it in there, this light would run on the single AA in a pinch. Now, when it's lower voltage like that, the output drops. So in my testing, I was getting around 800 lumens on turbo with the lithium ion. In the alkalines, I'm getting about 300. Now, the moonlight is improved on this model. If you know Synergy from the past, the lowest on the ramp that you could go was about 2.5 to 3 lumens, depending on the emitter you had. Well, now it's about 1.5 lumens. So it's not sublumen yet. It's not at about a lumen or under, which is really what I'm looking for. But 1.5 lumens is so much better than the 2.5 lumens. It's getting really close to my ideal moonlight. Now, with that said, here's a hack. So if you, and I'll show you on my old one here, if you have an on a loop in here, so there's a chargeable on a loop, right? It's going to be under the 1.5 lumens on the new light, okay? On the old light, it was about a lumen with the on a loop, but now it's sublumen on the on a loop. So what you can do, and this is kind of a neat hack, is notice that you can run one, right? And there is a physical polarity protection inside, meaning that you got to use button tops, and the button tops have to be, this direction. If you forget which way it goes, you can look on the back of the light, and there's actually laser cut, a little diagram here that shows how the batteries insert. Now, here's my hack, okay? Since I want more lumens in operation, but then sometimes at night I want a lower moonlight, what I do sometimes is I put one battery in the correct way and one battery in backwards on purpose. Now, remember, these are parallel, and with it backwards like this, the physical polarity lockout is going to just make this battery unused. So it looks like I'm mixing chemistries, but I'm not mixing chemistries. One is inoperable in this position. So when I put the cap back on, I'm going to get the lowest moonlight possible. And then later, if I want, I can turn this around so the button is now up, take the button on this one, turn it this way, and then I get the highest output possible. Now, don't do that unless you really understand what you're doing, okay? Because you're in a situation here where if you put these both in with the buttons up, you're mixing your chemistries, and that could be an explosive outcome. So let's not do that, okay? But again, you know, you're free to do what you want with your light. Just use your noggin. All right, let's talk about emitter options. He sent me these two models here, right? I got style 1 and style 2. And remember, style 1 and style 2 is just simply the fact that the tail cap is either going to match the head or match the body. However, you got another option too. And the other option you have as well is what emitter you put in the light. So I'm going to go ahead and get a really close up here, and you can see that this emitter is a Firefly's domeless emitter. And this one over here, let's get even closer. Let's get really close. So you can see it's domeless and flat over here. And this one is the Nichia 519A domed emitter. And they have different looks, different CRIs, different output. However, they're both excellent, okay? And I'm going to try and demystify what your options are in a second here. Let's take a look at an email he just sent to me yesterday. There's a pre-order right now, and if you scrub down here, you can see that they're $250 each if you place an order, let him build the light and send it to you. So not ready to ship. They're going to ship maybe in a month or two. But you know, you're going to be for $250 instead of the $275 it's going to be once they go live. But I also want to let you know that he tends to make a batch and then he goes on to make something else. So if you don't pre-order, there's also a chance that there just may be none left for you. So make sure you do pre-order. Now, if I click on this link here, you're going to see that this is his web page, and there's all different options here, like, for example, the color of the clip itself, okay? You can also have, you know, I clicked in to the red model. Notice that there was, you know, a camo brown and green, and his anodization, by the way, is so good. You can see on camera here that it's a vivid red, vivid greens. He does such an amazing job. And, you know, Ben does all the milling, all the soldering, all the anodization himself. He's really a master. But what I wanted to talk about was these options right here, which are the LEDs, okay? So that's a little small on my screen, so let me go ahead and zoom in here so you can see it better. So you basically have two different models. You can get the Samsung LH351D, the Nichia 519A, or the Firefly's FFL 351A. Now he's got double tints for the Samsung and the Fireflies. Let's talk about the pros and cons of these for a moment, okay? I'm not going to do Sekonic reading for all my lights here because, I mean, if you're into whether it's neutral or rosy, you should just really take a look at the website here and just, I mean, if you want a pink light, you want something rosy, then go ahead and get this one. It's going to be nice and pink for you. If you don't care about whether it's a little bit above BBL, I would get Samsung because the Samsung's the highest output and, in my opinion, the nicest looking beam. But then a good middle ground is the Nichia 519A, which is very high CRI, a really nice beam, and you know it tends to be at BBL, very neutral, or sometimes slightly below. The Firefly's 5000K here is a really neutral at BBL, sometimes a little up, sometimes a little down. The Firefly's has a little bit of binning variance. However, if you want under BBL, definitely just get the rosy here. Now you may be tempted to select your emitter just based on the color temperature, 4000, which is kind of a more neutral light, or 5000, which is a more daylight. You might be tempted just to do that, or select it based on whether you want it to be at BBL or under rosy. However, I want to tell you that the biggest difference I notice is in beam shape and quality. This one on the left is the Samsung LH351D, And you can see it has a dome, and it's sitting at 5000K color temperature. The one in the middle is an Emitter 519A 4500K CCT color temperature. And then the one on the right is a Firefly's FFL 351A 5000K. And you can see it has no dome, and these two have domes. This one has the biggest dome. It's got the widest hotspot. This one has a dome but smaller, and this one has no dome. So this has tightest hotspot, medium, and widest hotspot. But this one is the cleanest beam. So if you're really sensitive to beam artifacts, this one is like heavenly to look at as far as the geometry of the beam. This one's really good too, but this one's like my third favorite as far as geometry of the beam. And this one is my second favorite, meaning it's nice and tight and the beam looks really good. So let's take a look on my wall here and see if we can figure that out. So I'm going to start with the Samsung, okay? And let me go ahead and hit turbo. Now, if you notice, it's got a really nice defined hotspot with no artifacts in it at all. The artifacts, it's just nice and solid all the way through the hotspot, and then you got spill coming out here, and you can see my shadow of my hand. So the Samsung looks amazing. Now here's the Emitter 519A. Let's go to turbo. Now on camera, you can see it's a little smaller. You can see it's a little smaller there. And if you were in person, and if I was focused on the wall better, you might notice that inside the hotspot, it's a little less even. Now you just have to take my word for that. And most people wouldn't know. I'm a reviewer. I look for the stuff. Okay, so I don't want to blow this out of proportion. Okay, it's just if you look at them side by side, the Samsung is just like hardened. Now the last one I have is the Fireflies, and if you look, it's considerably more candela and a smaller hotspot. And you can also see there's kind of like a hardened inner hotspot and then a corona. So the other two emitters just have hotspot and spill, but the Fireflies has a hotspot, a small corona, and then spill coming out like this. So of the three, now let me take the Samsung and put the Samsung right there, and then put the Fireflies over here, and you can see the difference. And you can see that this one looks brighter because it's more candela. It's just more lumens in a more concentrated area. So again, this is kind of your idea of what you think is best. And I would just say that if you want the most brightest beam, go for the Fireflies 5000K. If you want a great all-arounder, I'd go with the Emitter 519A at 4500K. And if you're just a snob about the way the beam looks, then that Samsung is probably my favorite emitter. And I would go with the 5000 over the 4000 just because the 4000 tends to run visually a little greener and the 5000 tends to look a little more neutral. All right, let's take a look at the lumens. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on at moonlight. And you can see that my sphere here is saying 1 lumen, but it's more like 1.5. My sphere only rates it in whole lumen amounts. But now I'm going to go ahead and hold down and just ramp up, and you can see that it's ramping, and I can stop, pretty much at any amount you want and just kind of click and stop. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click, double, and you can see it went over 800 for a moment, and now it's dropping. Now I'm not going to do a runtime test, and the reason why is because I don't even have fully charged batteries in here. These are at storage charge right now, 3.8 volts. So that drop you saw from 800 is most likely just voltage sag under the load, and the fact that the 3.8 volts dropped to probably like 3.6 as I, was feeding it 3 amps. So, but you're not buying a light like this for runtime tests. That's not what you're doing. You're buying this because it's well made. It's American, designed to last you a lifetime. This is not cheap junk. This is really great stuff. Okay, we're outside, do some beam shots, and I've got the Synergy 1 on the right here with the smallest reflector. Then we've got the Synergy 3 in the middle with a small reflector, kind of like the Synergy 1. And then the Synergy 2 LT, the new one, which has the deepest, biggest reflector, so it's going to have way more brightness and candela. So let's start out with the Synergy 1 just to get a baseline if you're used to it. I'll click it on, it's on low, click it higher and higher. So that's the highest mode. Now, let me remind you, this tree is 20 meters, not this one, but this tree is 55 meters, and the row in the back, if any of these lights go that far, is 150 meters. So let's click this on again, and there's the highest. You see, it's kind of a floody beam. Let's look in the foreground here. This is Synergy 1 again. This is the clicky on alkalines. You can see it does make that tree over there at 55 meters, but not super bright. And I'm definitely not reaching the back palm trees at 150 meters. Now let's take a look at the Synergy 3 here, which is a lithium ion, so it's more output, goes straight turbo. Still quite floody beam for a reflector. You can see in the foreground here, it's a big, nice flood. But there's 20 meters, there's 55 meters, and it's a big difference between the alkaline on the Synergy 1 and this one. And I don't see it making the tree line in the back there. Now, the Synergy 2 LT that I've got here is the domeless Firefly emitter at 5,000. So it is by far the brightest of the options. And you can see it just decimates the Synergy 3 here. This is a warmer beam because it's at 3,700 Kelvin versus 5,000. But additionally, just a bigger reflector and more output on the Syn 2. So you see how floody that is, and then right here on the Syn 2 LT, how much brighter it is. Let's go for the 55 meter tree. So there's the Syn 3, and here is the 2 LT. And then let's see if we can make that back tree line. I don't really think that the Syn 3 is making it. The Syn 2 LT might not be making it either. There's also a lot of fog in the air right now. So, this is an EDC light. I don't expect it to go 150 meters, but there you go. Once again, the new Syn 2 LT is definitely the brightest, best beam of all the Synergies so far. Well done, Benjamin at FreLux. As I said, I have a soft spot in my heart for side-by-sides. They just feel really great in my hand. I love the kind of like trigger style way of holding them. It just feels really good to me. Sometimes I'll run at night for, exercise. And when I have a side-by-side, the way that my hand grips it with my finger over the button, I never feel like I need a lanyard to keep from dropping it while I'm running. So I really like them, and I always have, and that's why I got so many of them. But I'm going to tell you right now that the Synergy 2 LT is my new favorite. I loved the size of the Syn 1, didn't love the output or the runtime. I love the output and runtime of the Syn 2, but then, it was a little big, a little clunky, and I didn't like the moonlight was about 3 lumens. Then the Syn 3 came, and, it got smaller, but, I missed that runtime. And so here you have what I think is Benjamin's best light yet. He's, really allowed us to have the runtime and power we want in a light that's just physically easier to hold. And I think it looks really great. It's just an updated look, looks so neat. And then this price point for American-made light, $250 at the introductory pre-order price. I mean, you can't do better than that with an American custom light made by hand in one guy's shop. So go check him out on on the link in the description, and pre-order today so you can get it at that price. All right, thanks for watching, guys. And I got a couple videos planned here. It's summertime for me, so I got time to make new content. And we're going to be talking about Jimenez, which is ultra high-end lights, and we're also going to be talking about the new Vero that I have right here. This kind of was a kerfuffle on Reddit. People were up in arms about this light, but I'm here to tell you that it's a good light. It's really good. All right, I'll see you in the next review.